Okay, here we're going to be repairing a floor crack repair. This is about a 6-inch crack in the bottom of a shower pan. So first thing you're going to do is take a 5/16 drill bit, and then you're going to drill out each end of the crack. Now the way showers are designed is normally there's a support board built in there, and then there's the subfloor, and there is generally going to be a gap between at least one of those, if not both. So what we recommend is you drill some holes down all the way to the subfloor and some holes just through to the support board. That way when you pump the foam it gets in both layers appropriately. If you have any questions on that, we do a kind of an instructional video about level 3 repairs and about drilling the holes, where we kind of diagram out what the shower looks like and what you're actually drilling into. Don't be afraid to do this. We're going to repair those holes with the products in the next steps. So just drill the holes, and if you feel like there is a gap between both layers, then just drill some holes all the way down to the subfloor and some holes just through to the support board. Then pump your foam, and what you like to see is it snake out like that. That is a good sign. That means its easiest path to escape or expand is back through the hole, which means you've got good coverage underneath there. This one didn't take a whole lot, but we offer you 4 cans in our kits. That's enough to do most level 3 floor crack repairs that are 6 inches or smaller. After you do this, you'll want to let it set up for about 2 hours, and then you'll come back. Don't mess with it while that stuff's wet. It'll just be sticky. Come back and you can pop it off. Okay, here we're going to be prepping the surface for the short strand fiberglass material. This is after the foam is set up. I just pop those foam bubbles off of there. They'll be hardened, so you can just pull them off. Then I scrape off any extras that I have, and then I use my 80 grit sandpaper with my orbital sander hooked up to the vacuum to rough up and sand down the surface around the repair area. Now if your shower floor has like built-in traction, it's kind of grooved naturally, you're going to want to sand that smooth, otherwise the bonding material won't adhere to the surface as well. This one had been repaired before, so I was removing the coating from the old repair as well. You want to really start with a fresh surface, so that's what I did here. And then the next step, we'll apply the short strand fiberglass material. Be sure when you're done with this to clean it up real well using vacuum and acetone. Okay, here we're going to be mixing up and spreading our short strand fiberglass material. That red stuff is the hardener. We give that to you in the right ratio, so use that accordingly. As you're mixing it up, you just want it to become one consistent color. Now once you've mixed it up, you'll have about 2 minutes to spread the product before it starts to harden on you. So what you want to do is just kind of scoop it up and spread it out like you would drywall mud. You want it anywhere from like a 1/16 inch to a 1/4 inch thick, depending on how weak your backing is. This one was firm, so I think it was about 16 inch thick. Feather out the edges with your putty spreader, and then let it dry. Now you're going to want to let this dry for about 20 to 25 minutes. It'll heat up and then it'll cool off. Once it's cooled off, you'll be ready to go. After you finish spreading it, you got it where you want it, then I take a paper towel with some acetone, clean off my tools, and then I clean up around the edges to kind of reduce the amount of sanding that I'll have to do. That's going to be really key, and just let this set up properly. Remember, you've got about 2 minutes to work with the product, and then you'll let it set up for about 25 minutes after it's cooled off. Okay, here we're going to be mixing color. I don't put out each color because this one was obviously closer to an almond that just needed to be lightened up. So what I do is I used almond, and then I took my gloss white to lighten that up. And I'm just going for about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces on this one, as far as the amount of resin that I mix up. So my first swatch there, it's just straight almond. This one is after I lighten it up a little bit. Just be sure to blow dry this, for about 15 or 20 seconds in between swatches. as you change the color will darken as it dries, so you do want to be sure to dry it so you see the true color there. It's my third one, trying to lighten it up a little bit more. You can still see it's a little dark from this angle, and you'll be able to tell whenever you're doing this in real life really how that's matching, but it's still a little dark. You can see it from this angle, so then I do an even lighter bit, a little bit, dry it, and then this one ended up just being a touch light, so then I dip in just a little bit of gold, a little drop of gold, kind of had a grayish tint to it, I guess. So when you're mixing your color, you just always know that gold and gray counteract each other. So if it's got a little bit of a grayish tint, you might add a little gold. If it's got a little bit of a goldish tint, you might add a little gray. So that was my first swatch, straight almond, a little much too dark. Second one, I added some gloss white to lighten it up. The third one, I did the same, but still a little dark. The fourth one had a little bit of a grayish tint to it. So then I added just a drop of gold dye and got to the match that I was looking for. So that's how you match the color. Just remember, gold and gray counteract each other, and just move slowly on this. Okay, so in this one we're going to be mixing our product. So you always want to keep 4 parts resin, 1 part catalyst, 2 parts reducer. That's the ratio. So in this example, I have 1.5 ounces of resin, so I do roughly 0.375 ounces of catalyst, then about 0.75 ounces of reducer. You always just keep that ratio. So if you get confused, you can do, let's say, whatever your ounces are. So let's say you have 2 ounces, divide that by 4, would give you half an ounce of catalyst, and then multiply that by 2 would give you 1 ounce of reducer. So just get that ratio right. Okay, here we're going to be sanding the glass putty. This is after I've let it set up for about 25 minutes. I use an 80 grit sandpaper with my orbital sander hooked to a vacuum. It's going to reduce your dust a lot. So what I do is I go around the edges and I try to feather out the edges first, and then I go over the top and try to smooth out the top. Now this material is not designed to be perfectly smooth, so you may have some little divots, you may have some little pits. We'll fill those later. This one, you're just really trying to get those edges feathered out well. Just remember, if you can feel it, you'll be able to see it when you spray it. Once you're done sanding it, then you'll clean up your surface area, vacuum, and wipe down with acetone, and you'll be ready to go. Okay, here we applied the fine finish putty. The video messed up on this, so we'll get a new one up on a later project. What you're going to do is you're going to mix it up just like you do the short strand fiberglass material. You've got the right ratio of products, so just use it accordingly. Once you get it stirred up and folded and mixed up, then you're going to spread it on just like you do the other stuff. And what you're really trying to do here is fill any pits, any divots, and really kind of get the edges, so whenever we sand it, this stuff will sand a lot smoother than the short strand fiberglass material. Once you have about 45 seconds after you mix the product to apply it, then you're going to want to give it a good probably 15 minutes to cool off, and this stuff will feel a lot drier, not so tacky like the last stuff. Once you're there, then you'll be ready to sand it. Okay, here we're going to be doing our finish sanding. I used 120 grit sandpaper with my orbital sander hooked up to my vacuum. That's going to reduce your dust a lot. As you're sanding this stuff, what you really want to do is feather out the edges real well, and then go over the top. Now, it's not the end of the world if you get down into the short strand fiberglass material. Really your goal here is to fill any divots or any pits. So just kind of lightly sand it. If you start getting down into the fiberglass material, just kind of back off of it and then feather it out. Once you're finished, you're going to want to vacuum up your dust and really clean up the space well, because the next step will be spraying the coating. So remove as much dust from the area as possible on this step. Okay, so we're going to be applying our coating. First, we want to use the wipe-on primer, which is the gold solution. You're going to get the whole surface wet with that, and then you're going to dry it for about 15 to 20 seconds with the blow dryer before you spray your first coat. Okay, when you spray your coating, you want to be about 12 to 18 inches off the surface, and you're just wanting to fog it on the first coating. Is just fogging it on. You're not trying to color the whole thing. You just want to get a good base layer for it. After you finish spraying this, you're going to blow dry it for about 45 seconds. You want to let that set up a little bit and get a little tacky, and then you'll move on to the next step. You're going to repeat this process probably 3 to 5 times in order to get a good glossy finish, not a foggy finish. You want to go for a glossy finish, and just keep building up the product until you can't see the patch anymore, and once you get that glossy finish. Now you'll likely have overspray residue in the vicinity of the spray, so what you want to do is take a paper towel with the acetone and you'll just wipe that down. Be careful not to get too close to the thickest part of the coating. It could leave a line. If there is residue after you let this cure for 24 hours, go back, and if there is rough areas with overspray, take steel wool or 400 grit sandpaper and just use water and kind of wet sand that down. It'll smooth right out.